to Women Making Moves, where we celebrate the moves that women are making. My name is Amy Pons. I'm a Master Certified Life Coach and an Energy Healer. I'm joined today with Rekha Gibbons. Rekha is an award-winning Wall Street alumna. She climbed the corporate ladder from temp to C-suite. She has 36 years of professional experience leading 5 generations in publishing, finance, MarTech, automotive, and luxury. She participated in 4 decades of MarTech evolution. She has an exclusive and proven approach for business, education, and individual consultation. She was voted top 10 inspirational women to watch in 2022. And she's also the author of OG's Guide to Multi-Gen Workplace. Rekha, welcome.
Hello, Amy. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be on your podcast.
I'm so excited too. The moment I met you, generational guru. Oh, one of the things that just spoke to me, because I feel like with the big 4 right now in life, Z, millennial, boomer, X, everyone just gets more mad at each other. Everyone's just kind of pissed. And it's like, how do we actually help everybody understand that we have way more in common than we think? And there's such nuggets of brilliance. And I don't get it right all the time.
Yeah, and that's exactly the core of this. The thing that triggered me, it was last year, and I was watching Real Time with Bill Maher, and he was talking about, oh, ageism this, and oh, I feel like it's such an ageist thing. And I said, whoa, 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 hang on a second. This is not about ageism. It's about life experience. And the thing that's so important for older generations, I'm on the cusp of Boomer and Gen X, so I'm technically a Gen Joneser. Is when I was a kid, I remember thinking the same thing. Oh, your skirt's too long, or that's so fuddy-duddy, or you're so old-fashioned when I was a kid. And here I am having those exact same sentiments thrown at me. And the point is, everybody feels that way about an older generation. But there's one thing we have to remember, and that is they've lived longer, they've done way more things, they've survived a heck of a lot more things. So give them a little respect, give them some props, because, and this is the kicker, there's a lot we can learn from them.
There absolutely is. And you're right, they have survived more. I think what is interesting is that on this plane right now, prior to the pandemic, not one person has actually survived or thrived from a pandemic. So that's what's interesting too. It's like we have these generations that I think a lot about, wow, some of the most special times of my life, whether it be going to prom, participating in a dance competition, graduating in person from college, doing all those things in person. I feel for some of those things that the younger generations missed, and not plural. I guess it would just be Z, right?
Yeah, but I think also, as we were racing towards technology and digital, escalation, even millennials were having a hit of that. Yeah, I think you're right. The sad, sad part of the pandemic was that it deprived those kids graduating from a couple of the most important elements of education. And one is being around people, interaction, given the fact that we're on this thing all the time, having a school setting, having a community setting where you can interact and be with other people was so vital. Secondly, the whole concept of being in school and being a university is to become universal, is to learn how the world operates. And you learn that from the people, from the educators who are there, who have done it, and are so excited to teach that to the children of the day. So missing, and this I hear all the time, I lecture quite frequently at universities, and the thing I hear over and over again is, I lost a mentor to guide me and show me how I can plan my life, which classes I should take, what should I do? It just felt completely out. And that is the saddest part of the pandemic.
As the generational guru, what moves are you excited to be making right now?
So last year, I spent a good chunk of time, about 6 months, laying the foundation for my business. I did heavy, heavy speaking engagements at some really amazing places like Female Quotient, NASDAQ, talking to entrepreneurs, and also many educational institutions like Roger Williams University, Montclair State University. It did a couple things. It gave me a chance to test out some of my methodology and some of my theories and strategies. And I'm so honored and thrilled to say everything I dreamed of and put down and shared was embraced. I had kids coming up to me after my lectures. One young man was practically in tears, telling me, "You gave me such information, I don't even know what to do." And I said, "Well, we'll talk. Take your time. We'll talk about it." So there was validation. There was setting up the foundation, supreme validation of my theories and my ideas. So that was setting the foundation. And now what I'm doing is taking my message to the larger audience. Let me share what I have been able to verify and validate. And that comes in the form of workshops that I'm creating. One of the things that I learned as I was lecturing about leadership and how to survive and thrive in the workplace is a lack of skills with the cohort entering the workforce, Gen Z at this time, but Alpha's right behind. And they could be incredibly technically savvy, but there are some skills that I keep hearing from HR directors, from hiring managers, that the younger cohorts just don't have the skills to, number one, collaborate in the workforce with other generations. And secondly, and more importantly, which is, frightening, they don't understand how things work in the workplace. So technology isn't everything. Just because you understand Adobe inside and out, just because you understand Salesforce inside and out, doesn't mean that it's going to be successful. There's a statistic that 80% of hiring managers will hire a person who has superior communication and interaction skills over somebody who has a technical skill.
And you touched on this before we hit record. As we were talking about my pivot away from corporate a little bit over a year ago, I just heard you talk about the younger generations not having or not knowing how to operate within the workplace. Can you touch on a little bit, because I know you get this better than anyone, there's a difference between operating in the workplace, but also conforming to others' expectations in the workplace? Meaning, I'll share my personal story. I was always asked to be something other than myself, even though I was perfectly skilled in my own essence, my unique brilliance. And I was always being told to show up differently, which in my line of work was a middle-aged white man. So there's a difference there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the answer to this is a balance. And I was so thrilled because I was asked to lecture on this very topic, and that is unique skills. So to me, it's a combination. It's finding your major definite purpose, as Andrew Carnegie would say, as Brian Tracy says, and I call it your superpower. Find out the thing. Take the time to discover what your gift, your unique gift is, because nobody is wired the way you are. Nobody has the history and the memories that you do. Nobody has the DNA. So that means you are unique. Figure out what that speciality is, and then go in and learn what it takes to succeed in the workplace. And as you're talking, Amy, there's one thing that I love to throw on top. There's an interesting point where people say, oh, self-help and, the personal development thing is all woo-woo. And what I'm going to say is, and I've heard Brian Tracy will reiterate this, Jim Rohn, who was the founder and was the mentor to Brian Tracy, as well as to Tony Robbins, says this: the more you develop yourself, the more you will succeed, not only in your life, but in your career. So there is a place where anything you do to improve yourself will benefit your career and your life. And so the thing that I was thrilled to share, and I do share in my workshops, is there's two truths, universal truths. Number one, everybody deserves a fabulous, amazing life. You don't have to be special. You don't have to be a Kardashian. You don't have to be born into a specific family. Everyone deserves and is entitled to a magnificent life. And number two, you have to take responsibility for creating the life you want. God's not there to do it for you. Your parents have brought you this far. Your teachers are not there. And certainly your boss is not going to help you create the amazing life. There's some who will step up and be wonderful mentors, but nobody's going to care about the life you create more than you. So once you take responsibility for it and start doing the things to create that, you are 1,000% ahead of the game.
I think it's always interesting when those in the workplace will say, oh, that's woo. And I pride myself on working with woo curious people. Woo curious. And what I find is amazing is that what I believe to be true is that for the past 100 years, especially, when we think about different energies showing up, especially in the workplace, there's, in my experience, there's a feminine energy and a masculine energy, and it is not specific to gender. It's humans and how you're showing up. And what I feel, what I've experienced is the quote unquote woo is categorized like that because in my experience, it's the divine feminine being asked to come back in, which is the nurturing, the caring, the flowing, the trusting. And when aligned with the divine masculine, which is that action, order, structure, when those are working in harmony, that's gorgeously exquisite. That's the balance that I feel is missing in much of society and especially the workplace. So when I've said something about we're ushering back in the divine feminine, those in the corporate world will be like, no, we're not going to sit on the floor and sing songs. I'm like, what about what I just said suggests that we're going to sit on the floor and sing songs? It simply means creating that balance means that we are able to care about each other as humans, lift up each other's unique brilliance, and be successful in whatever that looks like in that business or in that work setting.
And I love that you're at the forefront of doing this because for thousands of years we lived in that world. We were farmers, we were in touch with the earth, we were nurturing the earth, and it's been the industrial age, since the 1800s to now that has shifted. And sure, there have been amazing advancements in medicine and wonderful in technology, but at the same time, we're killing our planet. So there is a point where we have to either stop and say, not just what's the best way for me to get forward, but what's the best for the whole planet and for everybody to coexist. And this is why I guarantee there's so much resistance to going back to that harmonic way of life because the power drivers are money, advancement, power, literally, it's not enough that I have tons and tons of money. I want to be remembered as the most powerful person on earth. Anyway, discourse over there. But yes, and I love that you're carrying the banner and advancing that cause. And you're right. One of the things that I do is I have a proprietary methodology. I have the experience of 36 years in corporate America, working in corporate America. I actually worked myself up from a temp stuffing envelopes at 16 years old to chief operating officer. And then I do have the degree in industrial psychology. So I have the groundwork there. But I will say the thing that has distinguished me in my career is studying business and personal development, metaphysics, if you will, for 30 years. And that has taught me mastery as a human being. That's a whole different level. And if you ask me what has been the deciding factor that has distinguished me in my career, it's being able to apply those principles.
Right. That's amazing. And metaphysics, that piques my antenna like no other, because as I was sharing with you, for the first 40 years of my life, I was trained and indoctrinated in the one right way to ever approach life, which for me looked like going to school, getting a job, paying taxes, retiring to Florida. That was like the life plan. And what started to feel really kind of itchy or antsy was in my mid 30s. I'm like, whoa, ooh, I was starting to get the call being for me that, which again, I call it the divine feminine, to create the balance that I've never seen in my lifetime. Because what didn't feel good to me was that everything around me was dictating that I do things one right way. I'm not a one right way kind of person. I am this wonderfully woo, spiritual, plugged in, attuned person. The beautiful work that's unfolded is me returning back to myself and trusting I have really incredible, unique thoughts. And now I'm able to express those and tap into those where in the first 40, I didn't feel safe doing that because it was constant reprimand or like conforming or getting in line. And so to your point, that moment is not it's not things that happen to me. It's no one else's fault. It's not about blaming. It's me realizing and remembering who I am on the soul level and what I bring in this world as a unique gift. And once I remembered that, I was like, oh, and I choose not to do this anymore and to go out and explore this beautiful unknown, but also on some plane very known, very, the things have already happened. So I'm on that self-mastery course too. And it's amazing. To your point, we've achieved all the things, but also in some cases, that's not the thing. Like it's really the self. It's really the turning back inward and trusting that more than anything or anyone, which is the hardest work.
I love that. This is the downfall of where we're at right now, the technology, the advancement, the digitization, this is an industrialization. This is the downfall, is to think that that drive is the key or is the golden ring. It's a piece of it, yes, but by crushing the internal human that we really are, which is what a lot of that does, we are destroying our true highest potential.
Right? It's kind of like I will tell I tell the people that I serve, my clients, I will say it's both the simplest thing and the most complex thing to think about how easy it is to let go and surrender to trusting that your unique path is going to unfold divinely and perfectly. And imagine being in this world where that's not possible in like the typical day to day. Would you agree?
I do, I do. And as you said, you got the calling. It came knocking on your door saying, hello. To me, what that means is this. I will ask this question to people when I coach. Can you say, I like myself? Say it 3 times. Okay. And they're like, all right, sure. I'm like, okay, now say this. I love myself. And I'll get a lot of people like, I can't. And literally, people will start falling into tears because it's such a difficult thing. Here's the deal. Until you accept your beautiful self, all the fabulous things that you know are you and that are amazing, as well as the dark shadow, as Carl Jung would say, you will never be able to put out your own energy because how can others love you when you don't love yourself?
Right.
Yeah.
And some of the most, I'm putting in air quotes, quote unquote, powerful people, if you were to ask that question to them, they would posture it first. And then if you kept with it, it's their mask, it's their way of feeling safe in this world. So, Rekha, I want to go to a post that you made on LinkedIn over the past week, and it grabbed my attention because I had no idea that this existed. So, March 1st marked Global Unplugging Day, and last week I asked you how you would unplug. Here are the results. 33% of you would turn off your phone. 33% would ignore alert notifications. 22% would spend the day in a bookstore, and only 11% refused to unplug. Thank you to everyone who participated in poll and shared their thoughts. What? There's an unplugged day? And
It was so funny. It came up on my, I don't even know how I discovered it, but it showed up and I was like, whoa, 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 wait, wait. And so I looked into it and there's a company called the Unplugged Collaborative. They actually have an entire movement of how they help businesses, schools unplug. And I think I have the link in my LinkedIn post. And they're encouraging ways to unplug, like, oh, take your team off for ice cream, beautiful things like that. And to me, this is the thing again, the humanization. Everyone's thinking, oh no, I can, I communicate with everybody all the time. You are, but there is something missing from this. And this is going back to what you and I are talking about in terms of true divine yin and yang, the yin side of things, which is balance. It is balance. And that is, there's no energy. I can't, sitting here with you, yeah, you and I understood each other's energy the first time we talked. Absolutely. But this is one of the reasons why I insist on meeting people in person. And that is, I want to get a feel for your energy. And this, unfortunately, while everyone is plugged and while everyone has that, this is why Unplugging Day was so incredible to me. Secondly, I think there is a necessity to remove our energy from technology, whether it's our desktop, our laptop, our phone, our games, and cleanse our energy just being outside. Go for a walk in nature, for God's sake. When our team went during COVID, I changed my title from Chief Operating Officer to Chief Optimism Officer because I realized that our team needed to be uplifted and have fun things to do. And so one of the things that we did was once a week, we would do a 4 o'clock happy hour, and I would do a top 10 list a la David Letterman of 10 things that improved during COVID, 10 things that, and the top thing that improved during COVID was sleep. But cooking was one of the fun things. Families were sitting down together. People were reporting that I'm getting 10,000 steps in every day because I get a chance to go outside and take a walk. These are all parts of humanity. Technology, industrialization, digitization is awesome, but it doesn't make you a whole being. And unplugging to me, I'm so glad that it resonated with you because I'm like, let's pull a little bit back. Please, can we?
Always balance. Extremity on either end of anything you do or feel. Feel your feels. Always feel your full spectrum. And then understand that moving forward requires a balance so that all your feelings, everything about you has a chance to be seen and heard. All energy, no matter what it is, wants to be seen and heard. So what's funny is I'll sometimes kind of probably facetiously say to someone, I'm like, go touch some grass. They're like, what? I'm like, go do something outside. Someone will say, well, it's always been like that. Like, what about when people used to read newspapers? People will argue that newspapers are the same as phones. What do you think about that?
I love that analogy. And it's interesting because I do talk about the evolution of marketing and technology and how it's impacted each generation. We're talking silent gen, right? At this point, the way they communicated was newspapers, right? There was radio, sure, and then newspapers. The thing is, your mind is being used in a very different way when you're sitting and reading something printed, okay? It grooves and paves different paths than if you're using your phone, okay? I'll do a quick chat about this, but wonderful book called The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Doidge. And he talks about neuroplasticity, which everybody's talking about these days. And he says in the 60s, teachers were reporting, and the 60s were when television was debuting in the living room of America, right? So it was a fixture and it was a window to the world for Americans. He reports that in the 60s, teachers started saying, I don't know what happened to your child, but all of a sudden they are exhibiting complete distraction, ADD showing up. And it's purely because television was debuting and they were seeing maybe a couple hours of TV. Starting right there. Okay, I'm sure there was even more before that. But you go forward to gaming, you go forward to Gen Xers and boomers had cable boom, right? I wanted my MTV. Of course I did. So, in the 80s, it's like I'm plugged in. I paid for it. My parents were like, what is that? We saw the emergence of cable. And then the cable took us from 3 networks plus PBS, which we love, to a plethora. And from there, it went on and on to the explosion that we see. But then the internet popped in. And then from the internet, then we have social media. So each generation has had that impact and has shifted and changed. The big thing with the internet and social in particular is what's interesting to me is the gaming taught Gen X to respond to chemical stimuli. They were getting a serotonin hit from, ooh, getting the key or whatever the game was bringing to them. Shift forward to social media with Gen Z is getting hits of dopamine and serotonin from a like and a share. This is why they have that addictive quality. But it's also why they're depressed, because when they're deprived of it, they feel like they're not getting that high.
You know what's wild is that as an elder millennial, when you said radio, I had to sit and think about that. There's certain things that genuinely don't exist anymore. If you were to ask a Gen Z, like, what's a CD or what's a cassette? I bring that up because there's things that certain generations just genuinely have never heard of, or like that just wasn't part of their culture or their bringing up. So it's like the brand new, the latest, the whatever one of the generations might not know about. So is there a space that you're aware of yet that maybe you're probably creating this, but is there a space where in a safe way the big four can come together and say, here's both what I'm frustrated with about your generation and your being whatever, but then also here's what I'd like to learn about your generation? Is there a space where the big four could come together and have that honest conversation?
I think it could. I think it's going to take a little bit of moderation first. And that means seeing people do it, right? Seeing four generations put together. I should actually do this. Oh my God, it's a great idea. Brilliant. Thank you, Amy. And that is sharing the uniqueness of each generation, allowing each generation to showcase, look, I know you think I'm fuddy-duddy and I know you think I'm old-fashioned, but you know what? When I was a kid, I thought my parents and my grandparents were the same. Nothing has changed about that. Matter of fact, actually, I have a fantastic piece to share and that I use. A professor named Lawrence Samuel talks about new generations and how they go back. He's running through this scenario and he was like, okay, so imagine this. It's a turn of the century. People believe their parents' generation is out of touch and stuck in outdated ways. The country's changing. It's so fast. And it feels like older generations can't keep up. The youth seek independence, freedom. They want to follow their dream. And the West Coast feels appealing. And so they're drawn to the West Coast because it feels like there's more freedom there. What era in American history am I talking about?
What immediately popped in was the gold rush.
Very good. It's the early 1800s. So this is the first generation of non-Native Americans born to this country. They saw things very differently from their colonial parents. They're more progressive. They were more adventurous. Guess what? This was Gen A. Brilliant, isn't it? And they would become the pioneers, change agents, trailblazers of American history. Guess what? That happened back then. And imagine it happens all the time.
I think probably what's happened too is that speed at which innovation happens. I read something, what used to take us 100 years now takes us a decade, like in terms of
Yes.
innovation. So it's moving so fast
Yeah.
that it's kind of cool when you look back in time and say, we used to cool our food with a big chunk of ice, literally an ice box. And I can't wait to see your big four, or like what you do with that. Having the big four in an ongoing conversation to say, like, did you know? It's kind of this cool, really educational exercise. And also, oh, by the way, certain generations might have feelings toward older generations, because there's a very real economic crisis happening within Z and millennial. There's a lot of blame toward certain generations. And so having that really honest conversation, because and by the way, to your point, like this whole conversation has been about beautiful balance. It's about helping different generations understand that the cost of living has been astronomical. There's also something happening where the currency, like the dollar, is becoming less and less valuable and cool, like the inflation. So the historical means of power, success, etc., again, that's kind of crumbling because it's asking for that balance of, okay, you have all the money in the world and the titles and the things, but how do you feel? The dam's breaking. I'll speak for myself. I'm out here helping people to understand how to welcome in the balance in their own personal experience so that we can all be in this together to bring in this shift of balance and not be only skewed toward power, structure, money, greed.
Here's the beauty of what the younger generations have heralded into our mainstream psyche, and that is they are demanding that they have meaning and fulfillment in their job. That's huge. You think of when we were, as you and I, corporate America, I took it, yeah, and maybe, one day I'll write a best-selling novel or a book,
Right?
or as you and I are constant seekers. They demand it. They're like, I'm not going to take a job. First of all, they have the ability to do that. Part of the economic crisis, I was trying to do an analysis of when I was a kid and how much it cost for me to do things. But you know what? I lived at home until I graduated from college, but I put myself through college, right? So there's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. There are still the same challenges. I think, though, the game has progressed so quickly and so fast. It's a discourse that can happen. But again, to me, you can't shove this down anybody's throat. You can't make a Gen Zer understand, look, I had it hard too. It needs to be in a form where each generation gets a chance to share in a fun, entertaining way.
Right. To where probably going to be some tears, there's probably going to be some rage, there's probably going to be laughter, but it's a place where you can share unabashedly. Listen, I just graduated college. I have a mountain of debt. I can't get a job, and the dream of owning a home is like decades away. Woo, that's real. And so allowing that expression and then saying, okay, how do we work together, the big four? How do we work together to evolve and help, let's say, alpha and beyond? We have almost four, actually, the big four in some ways are operating in silos right now. How do we come together to usher in the go forward together? So I'm excited to see that. I want to be part of it. Again, I'm an elder millennial, love to share. And especially for me, to your point, as again, for the first 40, I was like, oh, there's only one way to do life. I unsubscribed from that. And now I'm living in such a beautiful, multifaceted life. So
I love the direction this is going. And just to add for that last piece, is there a way to move forward? Is, understanding the uniqueness of each generation. And it's also allowing, because there's a lot of complaints I hear in the corporate world. And I saw a terrible meme where it says for every Gen Xer manager or every boomer manager, there's a person who can't open their Adobe, their PDF. So the flip side, the truth is there's a lot to be learned on all sides. The older gens have the experience of how things work and legacy knowledge of why things work. The younger generations have absolutely the tech savviness to show. So there's reverse mentoring going on here.
that's key. Up to this point, mentorship has been assumed. The mentee is younger and lower rank. The mentor is older and higher rank. That's not true. And how beautiful to reverse mentoring to be. That's what's going to be the game changer because to your point, the older generations, we're seeing this a lot post-pandemic as there's forced back to work mandates like in office. And the fact is, if you just take Z and Boomer came up in a time where literally remote work did not exist. So their safety and security resides in going physically into an office. Gen Z only knows remote office. So you have the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And depending on what it is, they don't feel safe in what they don't know. It all gets to be true.
Also, the question is, well, why do the older cohorts prefer an office environment? Guess what? Because you have energetic communication. It's like I want to be in an office with somebody where I can read them. And collaboration comes into it. That was one of my favorite things of having in office interaction, right? But then I also love working from home in my sweats. I've got some, my little sweats on underneath, my tights, my sneakers, and a nice top. It's like, okay, I can make all of it work.
I'm wearing a hoodie and I am not any less than. So at this point, as we start to wind down, what would you share to maybe each of the generations to foster more of that openness and that collaboration to be able to hear, to actually be able to hear the generation that they feel most dinged by, let's say? How do you promote that positive and openness?
Yeah, and I think it's easy to get cliquish or to get into this is my zone. Oh, I'm part of this demographic, this generation, this cohort. But you know what? Sometimes it's not just about being part of a team. Sometimes it's actually understanding what somebody has to offer. And that to me is the key, is like, look, for the younger generations, the important piece is these older generations have done it. They've saved, they've had their 401s. They know what it takes to save for retirement. They know how to pay off their bills. They know these things. There's certain life experiences that they do understand and that you can learn from. We've all had it. How do I save for a home? The interest rates, were high, down, up, all the way. They were in the 15s when I was old enough to buy a home. It's like 15% interest rates. Like, that's crazy. Everyone has that thing, but curiosity of understanding how did you do that instead of thinking, oh no, they have nothing to do with me. Everybody has something to do with you. Everybody has impact on you if you are interested and curious.
I think that's the ticket, curiosity. And it's interesting you bring up 401k. The other things I feel about some of these things that have been put in place, especially around economy, have not aged very well. So for instance, 401k, that was put in place for people to save easier or invest easier after the Depression. That's been
Correct.
100 years. That's the conversation I want to have, is like understanding why things were put in place and what doesn't work in 2024. Because I think what many Z would tell you is that, first of all, even me as an elder millennial, I have no idea whether Social Security is going to be a thing when I retire. There's so many programs and pieces of retirement specifically that were put in place that will benefit the boomers, but it might not be around for the rest of us. So that's, again, the evolution conversation we need to have to be able to take the nuggets of saying, here's why it was put in place, and then asking the other generations to opine or weigh in of how we could modernize, I guess, some of those programs to make sure that we are protected when we want to get there. That's what I hear the biggest complaint from millennials and Z is like, it's like, we're never going to be able to retire. That's the thing that we stress about. So it just all gets to be true. And so I can't wait for more of those conversations to happen.
That's a brilliant point. And to your point, the 8-hour day, the 5-hour week was, guess what? Put in place by Henry Ford for a factory
Right.
model.
Right.
Why are we following it when
Why are
we're
we
not
doing
a
that?
factory model?
Yes. That's a perfect example. That's exactly what I'm talking about. These things that were put in place for a very specific reason. I'm not saying they didn't have a time and place. I'm saying that they just need to be modernized and figure out, okay, what works today and what doesn't work today. We need to break out of that one right way that we put in place 100 years ago. So,
Completely agree. Healthcare.
healthcare. It's all. So, Rekha's gonna fix all this. So,
I love
okay,
your optimism.
Rekha's got it. Where can we find you?
You can find me at rekhagibbons.com to learn more about who I am, what I do. You can follow me on the Generational Guru on Instagram. Look me up, Rekha Gibbons, on LinkedIn. I would love for you to connect with me. Tell me who you are, what pain points. I love the whole concept. Actually, I do a fun thing called Throwback Thursdays on Instagram, where I talk about stuff that is old school, but is hilarious. For example, my husband and I were driving and we saw a pink Cadillac. And if anybody knows what pink Cadillac is, this was corporate branding for a brand called Mary Kay Ashley. She was a makeup guru, and to give her highest sales women gift or reward and motivation, she would give them a pink Cadillac. I'm like, yes, so this was branding at a brand level, company level that existed way before. It's like, Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So I'd love to connect with anyone, ping me, follow me, direct mail me, DM me, and let me know if you have any questions about generations. And also, of course, I do workshops and I do speaking engagements. So I would love to connect with anybody who's interested in hearing more.
Incredible. Every day this month, I am posting an ad from the 20s that created much of the beauty expectations, body expectations for women specifically. For instance, the whole reason women remove body hair is that when men went off to war, the big razor companies lost money. So they put out these ads saying, you should be ashamed of yourself if you have body hair. No man will ever love you if you have body hair. So every single day, I'm posting one of those ads from the 20s to say, here's how we got here. And then I'll post an ad from current day that says we've come a long way and we still have some ways to go. So it's interesting in the spirit of talking about it's more education, but also it's rage inducing. So I give that disclaimer. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe these were actual real ads. So
That's incredible. I love it. I'm going to have to look that up
yeah,
and
please. I would love your
weigh in
thoughts.
on it.
Every single day I post a new one. Amazing. Closing remarks.
I think the thing that I want to reiterate is that everyone is unique. It doesn't matter which generation you're in. You have uniqueness to you because you are who you are. Embrace it, love it, and then share it. Share it with the world. And if it means that you get a chance to represent your generation, awesome, do it. If it means you represent a man or a woman or a culture, we all have these things. It's your job to be you, so be the best and most incredible you can.
Thank you, Rekha.
Thank you, Amy.